Bleach is the greatest underdog story in all of anime, but I'm not talking about Ichigo or the plot. No, I'm talking about the series itself. The story of how Bleach went from a complete meme to a masterpiece in basically less than a year is one of the greatest stories in the anime community. Cause see, now it's popular to say you like Bleach. It's easy to get into the anime or go on Twitter and say, well, actually, no, you can't say anything about Bleach on Twitter because then Bleach fans will pull up some stupid joke you made 7 years ago and be like, actually, you're not allowed to like Bleach. So, what happened? Why are Bleach fans still so upset, and how did Bleach make one of the greatest comebacks in all of anime and manga? Well, to start, I think it's only fair we go back to the beginning of the manga, so we can understand how Bleach became so popular, and why people were so let down in the years to come. So, when you read the first few chapters of Bleach, right away you notice that this is a pretty weird manga. On the one hand, it's this dark and mysterious story with soul reapers and butterflies and cryptic poetry, and on the other hand, there's talking parakeets, goofy characters like Orihime that daydream about becoming pro boxers, and like any Jump series, there's all kinds of crazy over-the-top designs. Funny enough, it's this weirdness that helps Bleach to stand out from everything else, helping it become one of Shonen Jump's best manga in the early 2000s. This would continue into the Soul Society arc, which you can still see today when you find out just how many color pages this manga was getting. In case you're not aware, color pages are used to promote manga in the Shonen Jump magazine. So, the more color pages you see, the more confidence the magazine has in a series at that time. And during Soul Society, Bleach was getting a ton of them. I mean, at this point, it almost feels like they're back to back, which is basically unheard of, especially back then. As a matter of fact, there were actually 2 chapters where Bleach got color pages back to back. And, if I'm not mistaken, it was some kind of record among Shonen Jump series. Then after these chapters, you'll see that the entirety of chapter 162 is in color, showing again just how popular Bleach was at the time. Like, for a frame of reference, One Piece wasn't even getting this kind of treatment at the time. That's how popular Bleach was. Naturally, it was only a matter of time before the series would get an anime adaptation. In October of 2004, the Bleach anime debuted and was animated by none other than Studio Pierrot, the same studio that did Yu Yu Hakusho in the 90s, and would also animate series like Naruto and Black Clover. And of course, the anime was just as popular as the manga thanks to great animation, great voice acting, and an amazing soundtrack. But the anime wouldn't go without its issues. And unfortunately, these issues, along with issues in the manga, would eventually land a major blow to the reputation of Bleach. But before I get into that, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. Now, most people will probably argue that Soul Society is the best arc in Bleach. While I'm not sure if that's completely true, I will argue that the hype train that continued up through that arc was legendary, and is something that not many other manga have really come close to. That being said, a lot of people feel as though there is somewhat of a decline afterward. And while I don't think it's nearly as bad as some people make it out to be, I do think there are certain issues that start to develop at this point. In any event, the Arrancar arc is pretty popular and the series continues to gain new fans up through the big fight against Aizen. But as we reach this point in the story, the issues I mentioned before, such as rushed fights, only continue. And in the case of the anime, we get even more filler, which even as a Bleach fan, I will tell you, sucks. So by the time we get to the Lost Agent arc, or the Fullbringer arc, Studio Pierrot announces that the anime will be going on hiatus. And let me make sure I'm clear on this one. The Bleach anime was never cancelled. Let me say that again. Nobody cut Bleach. Nobody cancelled Bleach. Studio Pierrot, like it has done for several of its other series in recent years, placed the Bleach anime on hiatus. Unfortunately, this was in March of 2012, right after the release of Volume 54. So, one reason you can imagine they did this is because the anime had once again caught up to the manga, and so they wanted to give Kubo time to develop the story, and everyone in the anime time to take a break. But here's the thing. Thousand Year Blood War started right after the anime ended, and wouldn't end until 2016. That means Bleach fans went 4 years without the anime, and then when the manga finally ended, there was still no clear sign of when it would make a return. No official statement, nothing. And to add insult to injury, a lot of people, at least in the West, felt as though Thousand Year Blood War was a big letdown. They thought the fights were rushed, they thought a lot of characters were propped up only to be defeated fairly quickly, they thought a bunch of characters were skipped over or outright forgotten, and they thought the final fight was bad. Don't believe me? Well, 2016 wasn't that long ago in terms of the internet, so you can just go on YouTube and you can see the kinds of reviews people were giving this manga. So because the manga ended the way it did, and because the anime had been cut, according to all the so-called experts in the community, Bleach had fallen far from its previously high reputation. Now it was the laughingstock of Shonen Jump series. Now, for the next 7 years, people would meme on Bleach and its fans for being cancelled, and for apparently having one of the worst endings in manga. It really can't be understated just how bad this was. It was so bad, if you tried saying anything good about Bleach, it was almost like saying Rent a Girlfriend is your favorite romance manga. You were practically asking people to make fun of you. And because of this, it kinda just became a bad habit of everyone in the anime and manga community to take certain myths and assume they were just given. For example, there's the myth of Bleach being cancelled. There's a lot of arguments that people recycled about how Bleach fell off after Soul Society, and a lot of these myths were popularized and made worse by none other than Eyepatch Wolf, who came out with a video titled The Fall of Bleach, which was received so poorly by Bleach fans that he would later come out with a sequel to that video where he admitted his mistakes and corrected the many myths that he took for granted. In any event, this goes on for 7 years until 2020 or 2021, I think, is when they started to do all of these anniversary announcements. And among these announcements, they said that not only was Kubo coming out with a brand new series, but Studio Pierrot was finally going to adapt the Thousand Year Blood War. In the meantime, while everyone waited for the anime return in the fall, the Bleach community made a comeback. Tons of creators started to post videos about Bleach and highlight its many strengths and many interesting characters, while also correcting a lot of the myths surrounding the series. As a result, Bleach slowly began to make a comeback. Suddenly, people started talking about how much they liked Bleach and how excited they were for the anime. It wasn't exactly overnight, but in the months leading up to Thousand Year Blood War, people went from hating on Bleach to talking about why it was one of the most underrated series. 7+ years of memes and hate basically vanished in less than 1 year. And this only continued when Kubo released his one-shot No Breaths from Hell, where it was announced that Bleach was making a return to Shonen Jump, and the series would be entering the long-awaited Hell arc. So at this point, you have everyone all excited over the anime. That excitement gets people to rethink how they view Bleach, and at the same time, you have everyone talking about the potential of the series thanks to the one-shot chapter. Which brings us to the present. As Studio Pierrot has released the anime, each part of Thousand Year Blood War has been one of, if not the most watched anime of its respective season. Everyone loves the anime, they love the Burn the Witch stuff, and obviously everyone is dying to find out when we'll get the next arc in the manga. But this just leaves one big question. What changed? I mean, sure, we did get the new anime, and a lot of people in the community stood up to defend the series, but I mean, it's the same manga. It's the same anime. They have the exact same problems as before. So how did 7 years of hate just poof away in less than a year? Well, as we've already kinda touched on, a lot of it is due to the inflammatory reactions you tend to see when a series ends. For example, just look at My Hero Academia. You can see all kinds of reactions, from worst manga ending to the biggest letdown I've seen to Deku being Employee of the Month at McDonald's. You see it all the time, and in retrospect, a lot of the criticisms of Bleach ending that originally sprang up can mostly be attributed to these kinds of impulsive reactions. Now the other side to that is time. Like we've discussed, Bleach ended almost a decade ago, so all of the impulsive reactions have died by this point and are mostly irrelevant. And even the serious issues with the story have had enough time to be viewed in a new light. With 8+ years to reconsider the story, it's only natural that people would eventually start to give the series more credit. Finally, I think the biggest part of the new Bleach hype is the nostalgia. Again, this time gap has put distance between fans and their issues with the story, particularly their experience with the ending. Because of that, people have naturally forgotten all the times they got pissed off or disappointed, and in place of that have begun to remember all the cool moments like the Bankai and the fights and, well, the beach episode. This nostalgia is the most important factor, as it's the only logical explanation for why a series could go from complete hogwash to greatest of all time. Again, it's something you see all the time. Just look at the Star Wars prequels. When those came out, people said that George Lucas was killing his own series. Then Disney comes around and it's like, I bet I can do better, and suddenly people start to rethink how they look at the prequels. Turn to Bleach and you see a very similar story. That being said, I don't think Bleach suddenly got better. I just finished rereading the entire story, and let me tell you, it is a phenomenal story from beginning to end. The Soul Society hype train is still godlike. Arrancar has its issues, but some of the most iconic moments out of the entire series, and some of the best art from an artist credited as one of the best in the industry. Fullbringer is honestly much better than I remembered. It's a solid arc with decent characters, and it's the first time Bleach gets a proper cooldown arc. And of course, Thousand Year Blood War is amazing. But more than any of that, the most important part of Bleach's story is the first 10 volumes. In particular, the first few volumes, the so-called slow or boring part of Bleach. Going back, I forgot just how unserious this series is. And I mean that in the best possible way. Bleach is such a silly series, and it's easy to forget that, what with the death and the nihilism. But go back to Karakura Town and you realize this is a story about a kid who loves his family and loves his friends. That's it, plain and simple. If anything, Bleach is a lot like the game Tekken. Tekken is super edgy on paper because it's the story of revenge and world domination and devils. But you play it for like 2 seconds and you see the dancing bears, goofy aliens, battles in space, and the random endgame battles with lasers and every over-the-top ability you can think of, and you realize how unserious Tekken really is. And the same is true for Bleach. So when people say that Bleach fell off, or the next time you're wondering why so many people love Bleach, it's not just because of the cool fights. It's not just because of the nostalgia. It's because Bleach is an incredibly unique story, unlike any other that's full of personality. As a result, Bleach is still one of the most iconic and influential series in all of anime and manga. But now I'd like to hear what you think. What do you think happened to Bleach? What was your experience in the last decade? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like another discussion like this one, then check out my video on One Piece. In that video, I analyze One Piece's artistic evolution. You can find that video in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.